All right, let's dive into a topic that, it feels like it's absolutely everywhere online, the gender wars. It can honestly feel like you're walking through a minefield. But what if the whole idea, the entire premise of a war, is just wrong? Let's explore a totally different way of looking at this.
Okay, so that's a pretty bold statement, right? It just throws out the whole idea of this big battle between men and women. So if it's not a war, then what in the world is going on? What are we all seeing and feeling online every single day?
And this is the key. This is the core metaphor for this whole explainer. The idea here isn't that this is some big ideological fight. It's about individual, unhealed pain. You've got people who've been hurt, and now they're just bleeding that pain onto others, a lot of times without even knowing they're doing it.
So let's try to completely reframe this. We're going to step away from the whole war language. Instead, we're going to look at what might be the real root cause, personal pain, and how it ends up getting pushed outwards.
Now, this bleeding actually has a name in psychology. It's called projected pain. See, when we've been deeply hurt and haven't really worked through it, our brain looks for a way to protect itself. And honestly, it can feel so much easier, so much safer to be angry at a giant faceless group, like an entire gender, than it is to face the specific, raw pain from one person or one single experience.
And this really gets to the heart of it. The way out of this war isn't about fighting smarter or harder. It's about healing. This changes the game completely. It's not a political issue anymore. It becomes a deeply personal, emotional one that's all about our own mental wellness.
Okay, so if the root of all this is just individual pain, how does it get so amplified? How does it start to look and feel like this massive public war? Well, let's talk about the amplifiers.
This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How does one person's heartbreak, one person's trauma, get scaled up into these online armies we see fighting every single day? Turns out there are a few key things that make it happen.
It's almost like a domino effect. It starts with generalizing from trauma. One bad experience gets unfairly stamped onto an entire group. Then social media algorithms jump in and trap us in these echo chambers, constantly feeding us content that just confirms our anger. Add in some real-world stress, like worrying about money, and that gets redirected into gender conflict. And the whole thing is held up by this really toxic idea of zero-sum thinking, this false belief that for one side to win, the other side has to lose.
So we've kind of picked apart the problem, but what about the solution? This is where we shift gears and get practical. Think of this next part as your personal toolkit for just having better, more productive conversations.
And in this toolkit, there are 4 really powerful steps. First, try to pivot away from blaming people and instead talk about the outdated systems or social scripts we all deal with. Second, instead of making it a competition of who has it worse, just acknowledge that, hey, both sides are facing real challenges. Third, there's this great technique called the steel man. Try to represent the other person's view in its strongest possible form. It encourages good faith. And last, always remember that algorithms make money off of our outrage.
Another way to look at all this is as a simple choice between 2 mindsets. One is focused on connection and the other on conflict. The lover's approach is all about prioritizing your own healing, focusing on positivity, and building quality relationships. The hater's approach, well, it gets distracted by negativity, by gossip, and by turning that unhealed pain into hostility toward other people. It's a really clear contrast when you see it laid out like this.
And all of this brings us to the final and I think the most important piece of the puzzle. At the end of the day, it really all comes down to a personal choice. It's about taking ownership of our own healing so we can finally end this cycle of projecting our pain. And there it is. Just let that sink in for a second. That one sentence just perfectly sums up this entire message. This is the ultimate act of personal accountability, isn't it? It's realizing that your healing is your job, not just for you, but for everyone you come in contact with.
Ultimately, the goal isn't to win the war, because the war itself is the real enemy. The goal is to end it, to build something way better in its place, to shift from a mindset of conflict to one of real connection, or, as the author says here, to build royal love.
So we're going to leave you with this final thought. A war only ends when the soldiers decide to go home. If this whole conflict is fueled by our collective unhealed pain, then it only stops when we as individuals make the choice to stop fighting. So the real question is, will you choose to heal?